Welcome back, beautiful people. I am here to talk to you today about the elusive and mysterious matrix. A matrix, or matrices for the plural, is not a bad 1990s film with Keanu Reeves flying around, and it's not this picture of a cute, adorable baby red panda. A matrix is simply a rectangular block of numbers. It's got to be rectangular, so if it looks like this, then it's out of the picture. But once you have this rectangular block of numbers, you can do all sorts of fancy stuff with it. In the beginning, you can just talk about how big it is. Because it's a rectangle, it's going to have a certain number of rows and a certain number of columns. So this guy right here, for example, has 2 rows and 3 columns. And if some rando on the street says, hey, tell me the dimension of the matrix, what he's actually asking you for is just the number of rows and columns. So you would just count down to say that there are 2 rows, count across to say that there are 3 columns, and then say the dimension of this matrix is 2 by 3. You always give the number of rows first and the number of columns second. Now this rando on the street might not be satisfied. He might say something like, okay, that's cool, but I want you to tell me one of the specific numbers in this matrix. To ask you that question, he's going to use this notation. Maybe he asks you for the A sub 13 number. Now guys, that's not A13, that is literally A13. It's a 1 followed by a 3 because he's asking you for the number in row 1, column 3. To give the answer, you just count down to the first row, you count across to the 3rd column, pick that number, and Bob's your uncle, you're good to go. Now that's all well and good if someone gives you a matrix and then asks you questions about it. But when would you actually come up with your own matrix to represent information? Dudes, I'm going to tell you. The easiest way to see how is to label the rows and the columns if you're trying to fit a word problem into information. So, for example, let's say you've got Alice, Bob, and Carl. And let's say Alice, Bob, and Carl each ride dinosaurs a certain number of times on the weekend. In that case, if we're trying to capture this information, we could have a matrix where the rows are Alice, Bob, and Carl, and the columns are number of times they've ridden dinosaurs on Saturday and number of times they've ridden dinosaurs on Sunday. This is going to give us a matrix that's 3 by 2. And now if we're trying to dump numbers in there, maybe the rest of the word problem says something like Alice rides dinosaurs 6 times on Saturday and 8 times on Sunday. Bob rides dinosaurs twice on Saturday and once on Sunday. And Carl doesn't ride any dinosaurs on Saturday and rides dinosaurs 9 times on Sunday. So based on that information, we've generated a nice matrix that represents that word problem. And guys, what that means is if you see a word problem thrown at you in the future, and maybe you have an instinct that it's going to involve matrices, first start by labeling the rows and labeling the columns of your matrix, and then it's going to be much easier to know where to put the correct numbers in. I promise it's going to come in crazy handy later this section.